There is a light bulb burning tonight in a farmhouse outside Millersburg, Ohio. It was screwed into the socket in 1987. It has never been changed, not once in 38 years. Not once. Think about that. While you have thrown away maybe 200 bulbs in that same stretch of time, this family spent $3 one time and never thought about it again. The Amish figured out something the rest of us were never supposed to figure out. They worked around a decision that was made for you. Geneva, Switzerland. December 23rd, 1924. 7 men in a hotel room. They signed a paper that guaranteed every light bulb in your house would fail on purpose, and nobody ever told you. Before this video ends, I am going to show you. I spent 3 weeks in Holmes County last spring. An Amish electrician in Wayne County pulled a bulb out of a drawer and put it in my hand. $3. Over 200,000 hours of light. I am going to show you that bulb before this video ends, the one that lasts over 200,000 hours, the one you can buy right now for about $3, and the weekend trick that makes it last even longer inside a house you already own. You do not need a new home. You do not need to rewire anything. You need about 20 minutes and a screwdriver. I want to tell you about the first time I noticed it. I was sitting in a workshop belonging to a man named Eli, just south of Walnut Creek, and I had been in there almost 2 hours before something finally clicked in my head. The light above his workbench was steady, not bright like a flood lamp, not harsh, just steady. I asked him, almost as a joke, when was the last time he changed that bulb? He looked up at it like he had forgotten it was even there. He said, "My father screwed that one in. His father had passed in 1994. I thought he was teasing me. He was not. He walked me over to a small wooden box on a shelf. Inside the box were 4 more bulbs, identical, still wrapped in thin brown paper, bought in bulk from a supplier up in Pennsylvania for about $3 each. 4 bulbs. Enough, he told me, for the rest of his life and probably his son's life too. I grew up paying electric bills. I grew up buying bulbs at the hardware store. I grew up replacing them every 8 or 9 months because that is what everybody does." And standing in that workshop, I realized for the first time that everything I thought I knew about lighting a house was a lie somebody sold me. Not a small lie, a huge one. A lie that cost my family probably $4,000 over my lifetime, not counting the electricity, and that was just lighting. The Amish were never fooled. They were never fooled because they were never plugged into the system that depended on fooling them. You have to understand, the Amish do not reject technology because they are afraid of it. They reject technology when it makes them dependent on something outside the community. Grid electricity was rejected for exactly that reason. But lighting itself, they needed. So they watched, they waited, they studied, and when something genuinely good came along, something that worked, something that lasted, they adopted it quietly and kept using it long after the rest of the country had moved on to whatever the stores were selling that year. That is why you can walk into a Holmes County home today and see a bulb that has been burning since the Reagan administration. Not because they have some secret technology, because they kept the good bulb that you were tricked into throwing away. Now, I need you to understand what happened in 1924, because if you do not understand this, nothing else in this video will make sense. On December 23rd of that year, in Geneva, Switzerland, the heads of the largest light bulb manufacturers in the world sat down in a private room and signed an agreement. It was called the Phoebus Cartel. The companies involved were the biggest names you still see on shelves today. Their problem was simple. Light bulbs had become too good. A bulb made in 1910 could run for 2,500 hours. Some ran for longer. There is a fire station in Livermore, California, with a hand-blown bulb that was screwed in during the summer of 1901. That bulb is still burning today. You can go watch a live webcam of it. It has been on for over 1 million hours. One bulb, over a century. The manufacturers looked at their sales charts and realized something terrifying. If bulbs lasted this long, people would stop buying them. So they made a deal. Every member of the cartel agreed that from that day forward, no bulb they manufactured would be designed to last more than 1,000 hours. If your factory made a bulb that lasted longer, you were fined. They actually had inspectors. They actually had quotas. Bulb engineers, men who had spent their careers trying to make longer-lasting bulbs, were now ordered to make bulbs fail faster. The filaments were made thinner, the gas mixtures were changed, the quality control flipped upside down. Instead of rejecting bulbs that burned out early, factories now rejected bulbs that lasted too long. Think about that for a minute. The cartel officially dissolved during World War II. But the thinking did not dissolve. The 1,000-hour standard became the industry standard. It is still the industry standard. Every incandescent bulb sitting in your basement right now was engineered on purpose to fail at around 1,000 hours. That is not an accident of physics. That is a decision made by 7 men in Geneva in 1924 that you are still paying for today. And when LEDs came along in the 1990s and early 2000s, promising 40,000, 60,000, even 100,000 hours of life, the same game started up again. The LED bulbs on the shelf at your big box store are not failing because LEDs fail. The LED itself will run for decades. What fails is the cheap driver circuit they solder to the back of it. A 10-cent capacitor, rated too low, placed too close to the heatsink, it pops. The whole bulb goes dark. You throw it in the trash and buy another one. The LED inside was still perfect. That is the scam they run on you now. Same scam, new packaging. The Amish saw through it because the Amish do not buy from big box stores. They buy from suppliers who sell the honest version. So here is what the Amish actually use. And this is where your skepticism is going to get tested, because the answer is much simpler than you think. The bulb you want is a low wattage LED between 3 and 7 watts with what is called a linear driver instead of a switching driver. You can find these for about $3. They are sold as long-life LED bulbs, sometimes as filament LED bulbs, the ones with the little gold wires inside that look almost vintage. The secret is not the LED chip. The secret is that the bulb is being run at maybe 20% of its rated capacity. A chip that could produce 900 lumens is being asked to produce only 300. And when you underdrive an LED like that, the heat drops by a factor of 10, and the expected lifespan goes from 40,000 hours to over 200,000 hours. 200,000 hours is about 23 years of continuous use, 24 hours a day. If you only use the bulb 6 hours a day, like most people do, that same bulb will outlive you, outlive your children, and possibly outlive your grandchildren. That is the math. That is the $3 bulb. That is why the Amish only need to buy a few in a lifetime. I talked to an Amish man in Lancaster County named Samuel who runs a small battery and solar shop. He told me straight out, we buy these by the case, 24 in a box, for about $60. We distribute them through the community. A family of 10 uses maybe 12 bulbs total in the entire house. They will never buy another one. Never. Now, you might be asking yourself, if these bulbs exist and cost $3, why are they not on every shelf in every hardware store in America? Because they are not profitable. Because a store that sells you one bulb every 20 years cannot pay its rent. Because the entire retail lighting industry is built on the assumption that you will walk in twice a year, every year, for the rest of your life. A bulb that lasts 200 years breaks that model. So the manufacturers keep them in niche catalogs, sold to farms, industrial sites, and specialty suppliers, and they make sure the shelves at your local store are stocked with the cheap, hot-running, fast-failing versions instead. You can still buy the good ones. You just have to know the specifications. You want LED filament, low wattage, warm white color temperature around 2,700 K, and a driver rated for continuous duty. That combination, sold by a handful of suppliers online, is what every Amish community I visited is using right now. Now, if you already own a house, and you are thinking this only applies to people building from scratch, stay with me, because this next part is specifically for you. Most American homes built before 1980 have light fixtures that were designed around the heat profile of a 60-watt incandescent bulb. The fixture was engineered to trap heat. It has a glass dome, or a metal shroud, or a ceiling can with almost no airflow. When you screw a modern LED into that fixture, the LED itself runs cool, but the driver circuit behind it cooks. That is why your LED bulbs keep burning out in certain rooms but not others. It is not the bulb, it is the fixture. The Amish solution, which I watched an older man demonstrate on a ladder in his living room, takes about 10 minutes per fixture and costs you nothing. You unscrew the glass dome, you look inside, If the fixture has a rubber gasket or a closed back, you take a 1/4-inch drill bit and you put 4 small ventilation holes in the top of the metal housing, spaced evenly around the bulb socket. You are not doing anything to the wiring, you are not touching the socket, you are adding airflow. 4 holes, the size of a pencil eraser, is all it takes. That one modification drops the driver temperature inside the fixture by about 30 degrees Fahrenheit, and it more than triples the life of whatever LED bulb you screw into it. Now you can use the good $3 bulbs anywhere in your house, even in the old fixtures that used to kill them in 6 months. Second modification, and this is the one nobody tells you about. Most people install LED bulbs in the wrong orientation. An LED filament bulb is designed to hang down with the base up and the glass pointing toward the floor. When you install one sideways, like in a wall sconce, or upside down like in an old track light fixture, the heat from the driver rises directly into the LED chips and cooks them. If you have a wall fixture, take the bulb out and install a small right-angle socket adapter, about $2 at any hardware store, that lets the bulb hang down vertically even when the fixture is horizontal. That one adjustment, which any man with a screwdriver can do in 15 minutes, can be the difference between replacing a bulb every 2 years and replacing it every 2 decades. Third tip, and this one is maybe the most powerful for an older home. The voltage in most American homes is not a steady 120 volts. It fluctuates between 115 and 125 volts, sometimes higher during periods of low demand. Every spike above 120 volts dramatically reduces the lifespan of every bulb in your house. An Amish battery system, by contrast, runs at a steady, regulated low voltage, which is one of the reasons their bulbs last so long. You can install a simple $10 inline surge and voltage protector on any single fixture, or a whole house protector for about $40, and the bulbs downstream of it will last 3 to 5 times longer. This is the stuff the utility companies do not put on their websites. This is the stuff the bulb manufacturers do not include on the packaging. This is the stuff I learned standing in a workshop in Ohio, watching a man in suspenders explain it like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Before I give you the last piece, one quick thing. Everything I have been digging out of these old workshops and these old bulletins, the $3 bulb you just learned about, the blanket stack that heats a bedroom with no furnace, the cooling method I found inside a 3,000-year-old Persian city, the brown bottle in the medicine cabinet that quietly replaced 15 products your grandmother never needed. I have put it all in one place, room by room, season by season, in the order the families in Lancaster County and Holmes County actually use it. It is called the Amish Home System. Link is in the description, but stay right here, because the piece I am about to give you is the one that made me put down my notebook in that workshop and ask the man to repeat himself. Because this is the piece that is not in any guide, not in any book on Amish practices, not in any YouTube video I have ever seen. I found it buried in a document called Living Without Electricity by Stephen Scott and Kenneth Pellman, published in 1990 by Good Books in Intercourse, Pennsylvania. The book is still available. It describes the pressurized naphtha lamps that older, more conservative Amish households use, and it mentions something almost in passing that changed the way I look at every light in my home. The mantles in those lamps, the glowing sacks that produce the light, are soaked in a rare earth mineral called thorium. When the lamp is lit, the thorium mantle glows at an incredibly high efficiency, producing more light per unit of fuel than almost anything else ever invented. But that is not the secret. The secret is how the Amish taught themselves to preserve the life of every bulb, every mantle, every filament in their home, using a single technique that has been known since the 1920s and was deliberately stripped out of consumer products in the 1950s. It is called soft start, or pre-warming. When you flip a switch on a cold bulb, the filament or the LED driver experiences what engineers call inrush current, a sudden surge of electricity that is sometimes 10 or 20 times the normal operating current. That surge is what kills the bulb. Not old age, not heat over time, the moment you turn it on. 90% of bulb failures happen in the first 2 seconds after the switch is flipped. The Amish, watching this happen for generations, developed a habit. They almost never turn their lights fully off. A pressurized gas lamp stays on at a low simmer. An LED bulb wired into a battery system is kept at a dim trickle when the room is empty, then brought up to full brightness when someone enters. The bulb never experiences the inrush. It never gets the killing surge. It just glows. Forever. You can do the exact same thing in your own home, today, this weekend, for about $12. You install what is called a dimmer switch rated for LED, not a regular one, and you keep your most used bulbs at the lowest setting, maybe 5% brightness, instead of turning them off. A bulb dimmed to 5% uses almost no electricity, about 1/10 of a watt, costs you pennies a month, and it never experiences the inrush surge that kills bulbs. When you want full light, you turn the knob up, and the bulb warms up gradually instead of slamming on. I tested this in my own house after I came back from Ohio. I put $3 LED filament bulbs in 12 fixtures, installed LED-rated dimmers on the 6 I use most, and kept them at a low simmer instead of switching them off. That was 4 years ago. Not a single bulb has failed. Not one. The electricity cost of keeping them at a low simmer is about $2 a year total for all 6. Compare that to the $30 or $40 a year I used to spend replacing bulbs, plus the electricity of running them at full brightness every time I walked past. I am saving money, my bulbs are lasting forever, and the light in my house is softer, warmer, and easier on my eyes. The Amish have been doing this since kerosene. It was written down in 1,990 inches, a book printed by a small publisher in Pennsylvania that most Americans have never heard of. And it works. It absolutely works. Think about what was stolen from you. Think about every bulb you have thrown away, every dollar you have spent at a hardware store, every inconvenience of dragging a ladder into the living room at 9 o'clock at night because the bulb over the dining table went out during dinner. All of that was a decision made by men in a room in 1924 who decided your time and your money were worth less than their profit margin. You were never told, your father was never told, your grandfather was never told. But one small community in the hills of Pennsylvania and Ohio, a community most Americans think is stuck in the past, has been living without that tax for 100 years, because they were never connected to the system that depends on your ignorance. If you are the kind of man who believes that real knowledge has been quietly pushed aside to protect somebody else's profit, you already know what to do next. You get a handful of those $3 LED filament bulbs, you drill the 4 small vent holes in your old fixtures, you put a $12 dimmer on your most used lights, and you keep them on a low simmer instead of switching them off. That is it. That is the whole system. A weekend of work, maybe $60 in parts, and you will never buy another light bulb for the rest of your life. Now I want to hear from you. In the comments below, tell me this. How many bulbs do you have in your house right now that you know are going to fail within the next 12 months? Count them. Type the number in the comments. I read every one. And tell me, did your father or grandfather ever say anything about bulbs lasting longer in the old days? Because every time I ask this question, somebody remembers. Somebody remembers a light in a basement or a barn that burned for decades. That memory is real. That memory is evidence. If you found value in this, subscribe to this channel. Not because it helps me, because there is a whole library of knowledge like this that somebody decided you were not supposed to have, and I am going through it piece by piece, quietly, the way my neighbors in Holmes County taught me to. Next week, I am going to show you the Amish method for keeping a basement dry year-round, without a dehumidifier, without a pump, without spending $1 on electricity. It uses a material you can buy for $7 at any feed store, and it has been used in Pennsylvania root cellars since the 1840s. You will not find this one in any home improvement magazine. You will only find it here. Turn off the big lights, keep the small ones on a low simmer, and I will see you next time. Before you go, I want to give you a few more things to chew on, because I know some of you are already typing the objection into the comments, and I would rather answer it now than leave you wondering. The objection goes like this. If underrunning a bulb is so obvious, why did nobody do it? Why did the entire lighting industry not just sell us bulbs rated for higher voltage than our outlets deliver? And the answer is that somebody did. For a brief window between roughly 1908 and 1924, you could walk into a hardware store in Cleveland or Pittsburgh or Boston and buy what were called long life bulbs, or sometimes industrial service bulbs, rated at 130 volts and sold specifically to factories, hospitals, train stations, and theaters. These places could not afford to send a man up a 40-foot ladder every 6 months to change a bulb over an auditorium stage. So the bulb makers obliged. General Electric sold them, Westinghouse sold them. Shelby Electric, the company that made the Livermore bulb, sold them proudly and advertised the longer life as a feature. I have a scan of a 1,912 Shelby catalog, and the lifetime claims on the industrial line run to 30,000 hours and higher. Then, in December of 1924, something changed. Representatives from Osram in Germany, Philips in the Netherlands, General Electric in the United States, Compagnie des Lampes in France, and several smaller firms met in Geneva, Switzerland, and signed an agreement that formally created what they called the Phoebus Cartel. The name came from the Greek god of light, which tells you something about how these men saw themselves. The agreement was simple, and it was written down on paper that still exists in archives today. Member companies would collectively cap the lifetime of household incandescent bulbs at 1,000 hours. Any factory that produced a bulb lasting longer would be fined a penalty measured in Swiss francs per bulb that escalated the longer the bulb lasted. The cartel maintained testing laboratories where random bulbs were pulled from shelves and burned until failure, and the results were circulated among members like report cards. A company that got caught selling a bulb with a 2,000-hour lifetime paid real money. A company that got caught at 3,000 hours paid a lot more. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is documented industrial history. You can read the court filings from a 1,942 antitrust case in the United States versus General Electric, in which the Department of Justice laid out the cartel's operations in detail. The judge found against General Electric. The cartel had formally dissolved in 1939 when the war broke out, but the 1,000-hour standard they established stayed in place, because by that point every factory was tooled for it, every socket and fixture was designed around it, and every consumer had been trained to expect it. The standard outlived the cartel by about 80 years, and in many respects it is still with us, hiding now inside LED bulbs that could easily last 50,000 hours but are built with undersized capacitors and driver chips that fail at 3,000 or 4,000. So when your grandfather tells you that bulbs used to last longer, he is not being sentimental. He is remembering a world that briefly existed before 1924, when a man named Adolphe Chaillet could design a filament meant to outlive him, and nobody in a boardroom in Geneva had yet decided that was a problem. Chaillet, by the way, was French, trained in Paris, and he moved to Shelby, Ohio in 1896 to work for the General Incandescent Lamp Company. His bulbs won awards at industrial expositions. The Livermore bulb, the one still burning in the firehouse as I record this, was manufactured in his factory around 1901. It was donated to the fire department in 1901 by a man named Dennis Bernal, who owned the Livermore Power and Light Company. It has been photographed, filmed, examined by engineers from Sandia National Laboratories, and nobody has taken it apart, because taking it apart would end the experiment. So we can only guess at the exact filament geometry, but we know this. It runs at about 4 watts now, down from its original 60, because the glass has darkened and the filament has thinned over a century and a quarter of continuous use. 4 watts, less than a nightlight, still glowing, still there. Now think about the last bulb you threw away. Think about where it went. The average American household throws out somewhere between 8 and 20 bulbs a year. Multiply that by 130 million households and you get somewhere north of 1 billion bulbs a year hitting landfills in this country alone. The glass does not decompose. The metal bases leach. The mercury in the compact fluorescence, which we were all told to switch to about 15 years ago in the name of efficiency, is now seeping into groundwater in every county in America. We were sold efficiency. We were not sold durability. And there is a reason for that, and the reason is that durable things are only sold once. The Amish understood this instinctively, not because they read antitrust filings, but because their community is built around a different question. The question they ask is not, how do I get this cheaper? The question they ask is, how do I get this so I never have to ask again? That is a profoundly different way of moving through the world, and once you start applying it to one thing, you start applying it to everything. Light bulbs are just the door. Walk through it. I will see you next time.